He's got individual nozzle control, so Hawkeye. He's only spot spraying. That's all he uses the machine for. He's got a few sprayers. This is just his spot sprayer, and he thinks that no other way to spray. He said he kicks back watching the footy on his iPad. He's got his height controller controlling the boom. He's got his weed detect, turning on and spot spraying his weeds. And that's probably the best case scenario.
Hello and welcome back to Shared Ag Solutions by BCG. I'm Janine Batters, and today we're going to be talking with Stephen Richards from Goldacres about some of the technology they have, particularly the green on green, and how that might have a fit for farmers planning for profit in 2024. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. So today I'll just explain a little bit about weed detect, our weed detect system, which is an intelligent spot spraying technology that utilises artificial technology and cameras mounted on the boom to detect weeds both in fallow and in crops. So that's in brown and in green, we call that. Cameras are mounted every 3 metres along the boom. Predominantly, we mostly do 36 metres, but we have done up to 50-metre booms with this technology.
Wow, that's a big boom. Stephen, just before we jump right in, just for our listeners, can you just tell me a little bit of background about you and why you're passionate about this space?
Yep. So we've been working on weed detect for probably 3 to 4 years now. The main thing was just the chemical savings and introducing this kind of technology as a cost-saving measure. It's just a bit more technology that we can offer to growers to spec up the machines to get a better result, I guess. This technology became available when this company, Bilberry, was in their infancy, and we thought this is probably a good mob to get involved with. If we can integrate this type of system on our sprayer, we think it could really be a really good benefit for growers.
And just so for listeners, can you tell me a little bit about the Goldacres story?
So it's our family business. So I guess you could say I've been with Goldacres for a lifetime. I started with Goldacres. I went to Longerenong Ag College. Diploma of Ag Science is what I got. And I started working in Goldacres in about 95, I think it was. Basically worked through every facet of the business. Nowadays, my main focus is marketing. And I guess I've seen a lot of technology come through the business in the last 25 odd years that I've been in it. My first introduction to camera technology was probably around 2009 and 2010. Back then I was factory manager at Sonata site. And yeah, so back then we were predominantly fitting Weed Seeker and Weed It camera systems to 2,000 litre linkage units, and mostly for the northern New South Wales market.
You're talking before about the Weed It and the Weed Seeker. That's the green on brown, whereas now you're moving into the green on green.
Yeah, so the main difference, the Bilberry technology uses AI, and so it learns what's a weed and what's not. So it picks up the shape of the weed potentially in a crop, and as it gets smarter, as it learns different algorithms, they're called, it actually learns what's a weed and what's not, and it's always learning. And it instead of where the other systems use the chlorophyll, like anything that's green, they spray, you can't use that technology in crop because everything's green. So that's where the weed detect or Bilberry system really does stand out as a bit better system in our eyes, because it's, it gives the potential to spray weeds in crop. So all round weed detection all year round.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about how it works, as in what weeds is it currently detecting and what crop types can you use it in?
It works in two different ways. If the system's running in green on brown, it actually looks for anything coloured green. It picks up, this is a green colour. So it'll spray anything green. So it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what weed it is, or if it's existing, like an old crop. If it's green, it'll spray it. That's in green on brown. But when it's in green on green, it actually uses the shape of the weed. It gets a bit more selective. If you're trying to spray broadleaf out of a crop, a cereal or any other type of crop, it'll pick up any type of broadleaf weed and it'll spray it. So at the moment, it'll do broadleaf in cereals. It'll do blue lupins in lupins, grass in lupins, vetch in lentils, and broadleaf in lupins. There's a few other applications that are currently in testing. Some of these could have come to fruition since we've printed our data. They're testing for grass in canola, grass in cereals, broadleaf in chickpeas, broadleaf and grass in lentils, broadleaf and grass in corn and sorghum. So the system is always getting developed, and new crops and new weeds are getting identified, and systems are getting updated. So in a crop, it doesn't matter if you've got a few different types of broadleaf weeds. In green on green, the system can spray different types of broadleaf weeds. So therefore, it can be a different weed as long as they're broadleaf, they'll get detected.
What about grasses?
Yeah, so it'll detect different types of grasses in some crops, not all crops yet, but it will detect grass in things like lupins.
So it's really just about teaching it.
Yeah, it's got a database, like a weed database built within the system, and it can just go through and go, oh yeah, this weed is this shape and this size. So it takes a heap of photos and bits and pieces for it to have all this stored in its database. And this all happens in a fraction of a second, traveling at 20 k's an hour. This system can look 4 meters ahead with its little video camera, and then shoots a message back and says, yep, that's a weed in crop, turn on and spray. That's one part of the system that we've had to sort of work out. And then the next part of it was making everything work with our sprayer. So, of course, there's a few different ways you can set these machines up. Predominantly, most Goldacres machines seem to get 3-tier, which we call rapid fire, rapid flow, boom recirculation. They get all these bells and whistles on them. Most commonly with a weed detection system, most people seem to run 3TS Pro, which is those that are familiar with our 3-tier system. 3-tier system effectively gives you 3 different tiers that are switching on like a 3-speed auto in your car, I guess. Effectively, you can maintain the same rate, and you have a fair few speed changes that you can maintain that rate. With a 3TS Pro system, you've actually got 7 tiers. So by having more tiers, what we've found with a camera system is it really does smooth out the variations in speed to maintain the same rate, and it just seems to work better with a camera system. A few other things that change with a camera system, the way the pressure's regulated and bits and pieces does change. So we find a 3TS Pro system with our sprayers, 250mm spacing, seems to work pretty good, and it's probably the most popular. Other than that, there's what we call a PWM system, so it's a pulse width modulation. And to do that, we use the Raven Hawkeye 2 system. So it's got a few benefits as well. It gives you individual nozzle control, whereas a standard 3-tier or 3TS Pro system is 16 section. When you're talking boom sections, like if you've got a 36-metre boom and you've got 16 sections, you've got a section every 2 metres. When you've got Hawkeye, PWM, it's individual nozzle control. So you effectively have 36, 72 nozzles turning on and off. The Hawkeye system's a lot more expensive, and really individual nozzle control is effectively 1 metre nozzle control. So you'd probably gain a standard 16-section boom will spray every 2 metres. So if you turn a section on, it's 2 metre. That's what's going to turn on. So if you're doing spot spraying, like you want to spot spray a weed with a standard 3-tier or 3TS Pro system, it just turns on 1 section, which is effectively 2 metres. With a PWM system, it's effectively supposed to be individual nozzle control. It's actually spraying 2 nozzles, which is covering about 1 metre. Some people can see the benefit in individual nozzle control, and others think, well, it's only 1 metre extra per nozzle. So
But the PWM is more expensive.
PWM's more expensive. It gives you turn compensation. So turn compensation means it can vary the rate on the inside of the boom to the outside of the boom. I don't know. We're seeing most people seem to go with the standard 3-tier or 3TS Pro systems when they're selecting weed detect.
Okay, and price difference then?
It's a little bit tricky to work out unless you're sort of doing a quote on different boom size and bits and pieces. PWM be twice as dear as a 3DS Pro. I'd have to confirm it, but I reckon it'd be twice the price. Yeah. So PWM system works on its pulse width modulation. So you got effectively 1 nozzle that's turning on and off at a certain speed to get your rate effectively. So the faster it turns on, eventually it's just on all the time when you've got really high rates. But as you slow down, the frequency of the nozzle turning on and off drops down. So PWM, people do like PWM. But I don't know, most Goldacre sprayers are 3TS machines, which for what we do within the speed range that we commonly spray at, a 3TS and 3TS Pro system effectively does the same job, except you're running this through different nozzles. So with a 3TS system, you start off with your small nozzle, and then as you speed up, it's like you're changing the second gear. Your first nozzle turns off, your second nozzles turn on, your bigger nozzles turn on, and then as you speed up, they all come on together. So that's effectively how it maintains the same rate, but you've got a bigger window of speed. It's just like when you change the gears in your car, you're going from first, second to third. Your speed's picking up, but your engine revs aren't changing that much. You're sort of revving out first and second and then getting up to third gear and keeping your revs fairly consistent without first gear wringing its neck, I guess.
You're saying that, you don't have to be quite as worried about the speed. And obviously speed's really important for making sure you're doing a really good job.
So they recommend about 20 k's an hour or anything up to 20 k's an hour for weed detection. That seems to work pretty good. I guess you got to remember the system we use looks 4 meters ahead, and the camera's got to say, yep, there's a weed, and it's got to shoot back a message to the brains on the boom, and it says turn on. So it's got to do that within a split second. As it's looking 4 meters ahead, you're traveling at 20 k's an hour. So 20 k's an hour is the speed. It can go up to actually 25, but anything over that, and it'll automatically trigger blanket spraying. So that's probably not really what you want to do.
So how does it learn the algorithm?
The system is upgraded by Bilberry. They have to keep on loading information in, and then it's like an update on your iPhone. They send you an update, and it has different algorithms in it, different weeds, different crops.
That's really cool. So in terms of cost, is there a big difference between, because I'm thinking as a farmer, GPS, for example,
Yep.
When GPS first came out, farmers would have been thinking, I'm assuming they would have been thinking, that's a bit expensive. What would you say to people that were saying, well, it sounds really good, Stephen, but I'm not prepared to pay that. If it comes down to 60,000 and the tech's awesome, I'll do it, but for now it's too expensive. What would you say to them?
If people are sitting on the fence watching, I'd probably, most people do this. Every system we sell, their customer's always talking to someone that's already got the system. The benefits are definitely there, and the technology, I would say it's fairly well proven nowadays. It works well, it's reliable. I'm not denying it's expensive, but I guess there is the potential to save. People throw figures around of 90%, but again, it varies so much you can't really put a percentage figure on it, but there's massive potential to save chemical and prevent weed resistance. You're only spraying what you need to. You're just not using as much chemical, so it's got to be a cost saving there. I've heard of other users potentially spraying paddocks they wouldn't generally spray. There's definitely potential in the system. It might take a little while to see that potential, but you're using less chemical. You're only spraying where you've got to. The system relies on a few different possibilities and different variations. Depends a lot on the weed density. I'd probably recommend talking to someone who's currently using the system. We only hear good things, I guess. Some people love PWM and they can see the benefits. Some people are 3TS Pro advocates. I guess we just make a sprayer that's going to suit people's needs, so it's up to the customer. The system is very adjustable. If someone wanted to know if they're using the system to its full potential, I would say give us a bell and we'll run over a few things, a few settings, and if need be, we'd have someone out there checking things out. But we keep in very close contact with all our operators using weed detect systems.
The other thing I was thinking is you're saying chemicals not cheap, but also at the moment a lot of people are having trouble, or they're starting to have trouble, I believe, getting glyphosate and things like that. What is the accuracy like of these spot sprayers?
You can tune it to be as accurate as you like. It's pretty good. Like if you've ever seen a demonstration, it hits the target pretty well. If it's off target or it's not picking up weeds, you can adjust the accuracy of it. The system works well. It's the technology, it's there. It seems to work really well. I guess when you're first considering if you're going to use a camera system, like a weed detection system, the thing that we look at is you draw a 5 metre by 5 metre box, pick out a section in your crop and just have a look at the weed density, because depending on the nozzle system that you've chosen, if it's a 3TS system or a PWM, you have to have a look and see what your weed density is in a 5 metre box, because you've got You got to remember, if it turns on 2 sections, it's going to cover 4 meters on a 3TS system. So you're going to effectively spray 4 meters anyway if you turn 2 sections on. So I guess that's the first thing when you're looking to spot spray a paddock. So you might, for a start, until the weed density gets down a little bit, you might be thinking, geez, I'm going to blanket spraying all the time anyway. So there's a few things to consider. The thing with a spot spraying system is it will eventually get your weed population down. Some of these things just take a little bit of time. So there's potential to save heaps. And I guess most people that get a system and they've been using a little bit, they're saying the same thing. I can see there's massive potential. We're not saving that much yet, but in time, I'm sure it will save us heaps. Once people get their mind over that part, the system does work really well.
Do you think you were talking about resistance earlier, and I was talking to a couple of farmers about this. Do you think that perhaps, even if maybe they're not seeing the difference in the pricing, do you think that they're getting a better kill? They're saying, well, I'm actually going to make my brew stronger, but only spot spray. And that way they're either probably using maybe the same amount, depending on, as you say, how many are there, or perhaps still less.
Yeah, definitely. I think the mixtures probably do go up a little bit, but effectively they are using less chemical. They're not using as much of their tank when you're spraying. You're only spraying the weeds. So, yeah, it's got to be a win.
So you've got the initial outlay of the tech. Are there subscription costs as well?
Yep. So the standard system is just green on brown, and then it's upgradable to green on green. So if someone's thinking, oh, well, for starters, I'll just use it as a green on brown system, just like a lot of the others on the market, you can do that. And then later down the track, you can upgrade it to green on green algorithms. There's a few other subscriptions and bits and pieces that you can do, which I'm not really across, but yeah, it's all available.
Yeah, okay. Because what I was thinking is perhaps if you've paid for this technology, you're paying for the green on green subscription, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, I really want to get some bang for my buck here, Stephen. I don't love paying a subscription fee, but I know it's got the goods. I really want to work it here. Could you say 2022, people growing beans, for example, a lot got just smashed by the weather, and a lot of them died, or big patches of brown. Could you potentially use the green on brown as to spray fungicide, to spray like Morava Star or something on the beans that are alive?
Oh, good question. I guess you could. I've never really been asked that, but I can't see why it wouldn't work. I guess it could, because it would just think that the beans are a weed, I guess. But I'm not 100% sure. We've never really done anything like that. I guess anything is possible as long as the system does learn, and they're upgrading algorithms and bits and pieces. So yeah, there's definitely other ways that people are going to use them. I guess I can't see why it couldn't do that. I guess if it's only spraying the bits it needs to, it's just there's a massive chemical saving. There's less wear and tear on the machine. You're not doing as many hours in the sprayer. So there's a lot of benefits. I guess we've only ever thought of it. The main benefit is spraying weeds out of your crops all year round. And I guess that's where we've sort of focused on. But, who knows what people use them for. It's a pretty clever system.
Yeah. So in regards to, you're saying less chemical, less time in the cab, which obviously that's what we all want. This is just a question and maybe something for, future. Would it be possible to put 2 tanks on a boom, 2 pumps on a boom, so then one is doing fungicide and the other's going fetch on your spot sprayer?
Yeah, I can't see that it couldn't do it, but effectively at the moment, we're one product. I probably need to ask a few questions just to see if anyone's ever done this. As far as I'm aware, it's just one product, one weed.
Okay, but food for thought.
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
Okay, so in regards to, what would you say to someone that's thinking, I want to reduce my weed seed burden, or I want to reduce my weeds, but I'm not sure whether to go with a weed seed destructor or this green on green or green on brown tech? What are your thoughts on that?
Conversations I've had with other people who have actually just purchased a Weedatech system, I asked them the other day, what would you recommend? Do you think you'd have both technology? And he said, well, I just couldn't get my contract harvester to actually put a seed destructor on. He said, effectively, I'd like to have both. Why wouldn't you? If you can get the best weed control you can get. I guess contractors are probably not that keen to use more fuel on their header, and it's slower, and it's if you've got a weed destructor. So I guess there's pros and cons for weed destruction.
Yeah, okay. I was just interested to hear what you said. In terms of same sort of lines, reducing the weed seed bank. So I was thinking about residual, on preems, that sort of thing. Is there an ability, or do you think in the future there would be an ability for there probably is, but do these cameras map your paddock? Like, I'm imagining them going along and going, okay, there's some ryegrass there. So they're spraying out ryegrass, whatever they're doing. But are they also thinking, I suppose, are they also looking in the paddock for what else is there? Are they producing a map or something where in that area of the paddock, okay, I know that there's a big thistle problem, but there's not in the whole paddock. So I can tell my machine to just spray residual in that area. Am I making sense?
Yeah, yep. I'd need to do a little bit of homework, but as far as I'm aware, the system it'll show you actually where the weeds are on a map as you're driving over it. And if you've got it tuned up fairly to pick up fine weeds, it'll actually see the weeds that you can't see. It actually draws them on a real-time map as you're going along, and then it's just doing its thing. It's turning on and off. But I don't think it actually maps the whole paddock. It sort of does it as you're going over it.
Do you get a map at the end?
I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah, okay. What other questions have you guys been asked that you think our listeners might be interested in knowing the answers to, Stephen?
Oh, it's pretty tricky. We get asked for a million different things. I guess it's mostly with product development on our machines, because we're Australian made and we do design everything in-house. I guess it's not as hard for us to implement some of these changes. If they can do two jobs at once, they'd like to do it. I don't know. I guess it just comes down to efficiency and doing a better job. We try and build that into our sprayers.
Okay. You were talking about how the cameras need to see 4 meters ahead, and I've seen some of the photos. They're sitting up on the boom and they look pretty strong. Do you have many farmers that are saying, oh, I just smashed off a camera, Stephen?
It does happen. A lot of this stuff does seem to happen in transport when we're moving the sprayers around ourselves. The cameras have to be set up, and if you move it a millimetre, they've got to be recalibrated. So they're fairly finely tuned, so you don't want to knock them around too much, and they're pretty expensive, as you can imagine. No, we don't seem to get that many people wrecking them, other than in transport. They do flip down. They've got a little hinge on them that they can flip down for transport. So it's not that common for people to wreck them.
What about the tech? Are they pretty much no worries, or do you find that they have glitches and things like that?
Once they're set up, they seem to be very reliable. They seem to work really well. We don't get too many inquiries on people can't get it to work properly. Our tech guys initially go out with the dealer and set these systems up. It's fairly straightforward. Once they're calibrated, the system does seem to be pretty robust. Seems to be a good thing. There is one thing that I didn't mention yet. When you fit a weed detect system, you have to have a height controller as well. It's important for the camera system to be the right height off the ground. So we always put an XRT system, which is a radar-based height controller on our sprays that get weed detect. If you get weed detect, you need to have a height controller. So yeah, it's really important to get the cameras the right distance off the ground and keep them there.
I was going to ask you that. That was actually going to be my next question. I was thinking about in bumpy paddocks and if the axle was moving around a lot, how would that affect? So you're talking the radar system. Is that like a gimbal?
No, it's got the XRT system that we use is radar based, so it uses 5 sensors along the boom, and it lifts the centre up and it lifts the boom wings up, tilts everything up. It just controls all that, so it just keeps the boom at the optimum spray height, and it works really well. Being radar based, it's not affected by dust or mud. It's taken a long time for these height control systems to actually start working properly, and the XRT, there's really nothing else that compares to it. It works really well.
So that's also on. So that's not only on like bumps, but also on turning.
Yeah. It always maintains the spray at the correct boom height.
That's so cool. And so are the cameras, are they sort of too high up to be affected by dust, or do they get affected by dust?
Good question. So the camera system can be affected by dust. I guess the rule of thumb with a weed detect system is if the camera can't see the weeds, it won't turn on. It's a little bit more accurate than a person. A lot of the time it's spraying and you can't see the weeds because they're fairly fine. But I guess it's if you were hanging off the end of a boom and you were looking 4 meters ahead, you'd probably be able to spot it. But if the camera system can't see the weeds, it doesn't turn on. So if it gets covered in dust, or there's a few other things, if there's heavy stubble, and the weeds actually sitting behind the stubble, that will affect its accuracy. The light conditions, we offer a light package with a weed detect system, so you can spray at night. Without that, if you're trying to spray at night, if it can't see it, it won't turn on. So you might need a light package if you want to do some night spraying. Anything over 25 k's an hour will affect the accuracy and the crop canopy. So if the canopy's hanging over the weeds and the camera can't visually see it, it won't turn on. I guess that's the general rule of thumb. If you can't see it, it won't see it.
So would you say that in terms of dust, would you say that's a common problem or not really?
It's not too bad. The cameras are mounted every 3 meters, and the ones you're probably thinking the ones behind the wheels are mostly affected by dust. But we mount 2 cameras on the front of the machine, so they're right in front of the front wheels. So they're not affected by dust because they're in front. And all the others are 3 meters on the other side of each boom. So it doesn't seem to be a very common problem. I guess the dust, it's like any other spraying day. You've got to make sure the conditions are right.
Are you saying that these systems work best in a certain type of system and a certain type of area?
Yeah, definitely. The West Australians have definitely adopted this technology early, I guess. Over there, they've obviously got big runs, big open paddocks. The weed density seems to be a little bit less. Crops aren't quite as tall usually. We've sold a heap of systems around Geraldton, and they seem to be going that they think it's just a no-brainer. One of the systems I'm thinking of is on a 50-metre boom. He's got individual nozzle control, so Hawkeye. He's only spot spraying. That's all he uses the machine for. He's got a few sprayers. This is just his spot sprayer, and he thinks that there's just no other way to spray. He said he kicks back watching the footy on his iPad. He's got his height controller controlling the boom. He's got his weed detect, turning on and spot spraying his weeds. And so that's probably the best case scenario.
What does his farm look like?
Oh, huge acreage, big long runs.
Crop type, soil type?
Fairly sandy sort of soil, and just your standard wheat canola type setups, all these cereal crops. We don't see too many camera systems getting used, I guess, around Ballarat, our local area, where the weed density is probably a little bit higher. Yeah, the farming, I guess you could say, is a bit more intensive. Where you find these systems are starting to really take off is in through the Mallee, around Swan Hill's been a fairly good area, pushing through parts of South Australia and definitely in West Australia.
And so you're saying bigger farms, are they growing wheat, barley, canola, some legumes?
Yeah, that seems to be what suits the system best. I guess it comes down to the weed population. You see a few systems going up into New South Wales. There's a few progressive farmers up there adopting the technology, mostly just for the green on green. And guys that we've been working with to sort of learn a lot of these algorithms, I guess in those areas, they seem to think that they can see the potential, but it's taken a little bit longer to actually get it. Whereas in other areas where it's a bit more marginal, less rainfall, there might be a little bit less weed count, they seem to be instant benefits.
Yeah, okay. And so in terms of where you think this technology is going to go, it might all be secret, but where do you see this is going in the future? What's the next step?
Seems like smaller tanks could be the norm. Everyone wants to get bigger and bigger, but when you've got a weed detect or a camera system doing what it should, you're not going to need as big a tank. Probably comes down to if you can get on a crop all year round, you don't need, you want to carry less weight. So you just don't really need too big a tank to be doing all this if you're only spot spraying weeds. Guys over in Geraldton, I use them as an example again, they've got G6s with either 42 or 48 50-metre booms. And they basically said, I don't really need 6,000 litre tank, but that's what the machine is with that bigger boom because they're only spot spraying, but they don't have to fill up too often because they're only spot spraying. It doesn't use as much chemical, obviously. So in the future, I think it's more targeted, it's more accurate, less chemical required. So in effect, smaller tank, smaller machine. Boom size seems to be still up there. They like big booms. In saying that, most commonly we still do 36 metres with weed detect systems. I guess another way that we're seeing things go is autonomous spraying. We're getting involved in that to a certain extent. We make a dedicated autonomous little sprayer. So, can I tell you? So, autonomous tractor is the likes of Swarm Farm Swarm Bots up in New South Wales. We've got a machine over in the west that's hooked onto the back of a Swarm Bot. Basically, I think they're about 70 horsepower. They're not massive. So we fit up a 2,500 litre sprayer on the back of it, 18 to 24 metres in boom width, and it's just dedicated to spot spraying paddock. So the whole thing's hooked up to a weather station. It's driverless. They just set it, chuck it in the paddock and set it and off it goes.
That was Stephen Richards from Goldacres. If you'd like to find out more, check out the show notes. This is the 7th episode of our Planning for Profit series. Be sure to hit follow, and if you loved it, give it 5 stars and share it with your friends. Until next time.